I found papers from the Indian Medical Gazette published in 1895, pre-independence India, where doctors and surgeons have documented massive amounts of cases of diabetes in the rice-eating population. Tell me, where did the processed foods come in? It wasn't there.
Right.
They didn't even have refined oils or seed oils at that time. They used to use animal fats to cook.
We all should know by now how important it is to get in enough protein. I talk about this all the time. An excellent way to add in some additional animal-based protein with a full amino acid profile is with Equip Prime Protein. This is the one I love. This is the one I recommend. Every scoop has 4 ounces of super collagenous grass-fed beef. Use the code TheCarnitarian and you'll get 15% off your first order over at Equip Food. Hey, everybody. Today, I'm so pleased we have with us Dr. Ankur Verma, who is an emergency medicine doctor in New Delhi, India. He is a proponent and advocate for the carnivore diet. He has his own podcast, the Desi EM Project, on Spotify, where he discusses nutrition myths, and he brings forward some amazing real world experiences when it comes to things like diet dogma and different health approaches. I got the privilege of being a guest on his podcast, and I am so pleased that he agreed to come on to the channel. So, Dr. Verma, welcome.
Thank you so much, Linda. I mean, it's an absolute honor to be on your podcast. It was
Oh, it's
fun.
going to be great.
Yeah, it was fun chatting with you last time. Just looking forward to having some more conversations.
Fantastic. Well, I'm super glad you're here. So, like, for the people who don't know you yet, can you just sort of give us a brief introduction, your background, what you do, and how you got started with the carnivore diet, and why you feel so strongly about advocating for the diet?
Yeah, so I'm an emergency physician by training. I've been practicing medicine for about 18 years now. And I always thought I was fit because I'd been working out for many years and I used to eat everything that my trainers used to tell me. And of course, I was training to save lives. I was training my residents to save lives, and we used to do that in the acute phases. Save their lives, and there were quite a few that we could not, obviously. But then over the years, I realized that there's something wrong with all of us in the way we treat patients, and it started off with myself because in 2021, I realized that my triglycerides had hit 600, and I was weighing about 86 kgs. And then I just had a moment where I thought I don't know anything about nutrition. There is something wrong that I might be doing. I spoke to one of my cardiologists, and the first thing he said was cut off all your sugar. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, why not? So I went down that path. I cut off. So I used to eat everything, and that included whole foods, meats, junk food, obviously pizzas, burgers, all of that. And
Hmm.
and I always thought, yeah, all right, I need the calories because I work out so much. So the one thing that I figured out was that I was not addicted to sugars because it was really easy for me to just stop it because of my health issues. So I cut that off, and then I got introduced to this book called Metabolical by Professor Robert Lustig. He's a pediatric endocrinologist in UCSF. So one of my cousins was actually asking me, have you heard of metabolic syndrome? Like, yeah, I know what metabolic syndrome is about. Maybe I didn't know it as well as I know now. But Ayan, you want to come meet her? That's my son. So he was like, "Oh, you're talking to Linda again."
Tell him I said hi.
She says, "Hi, Ayan." So then I was like, "Yeah, but what are you talking about?" He's like, "There's this book called Metabolical. I've read it, but since you're a doctor, you're going to understand much more about it, and try to explain what Professor Lustig's talking about." So I was like, "Yeah, why not?" I read that book. I actually opened my eyes to metabolic. So I'm like, it's nothing what it was nothing close to what I knew about metabolic syndromes, you
Mm.
know. And he got me. I mean, obviously, Professor Lustig got me into understanding sugars and how to eat well and what all sugars do to you. So that just took me to the down the rabbit hole into keto and high protein, high fat diets. Uh, but because my TGs were high, obviously my LDL was also high, and so I was put on statins by the cardiologist. And once I got into my research, I stopped statins in like 6 months, and so I was doing basically keto. I had cut off red meats also because of my high LDL right at that time. So that was only the first 6 months before I started delving deeper into nutrition, and I understood all the myths that we were taught, not even taught in medical school, but we were just forced upon it. Just we just had to muck it up and then reproduce it for our patients. So I stopped my statins. So I went keto. I lost like 21 to 22 kilos in about 7 months or something, but I could still feel that I was a little inflamed. Not that I knew it. uh, I didn't know what to do about it because I thought I was now getting much, much better. And then last year in April, somebody sent me Saladino's reel. I think everybody starts off either with him or with Sean Baker.
Yes, I hear that a lot.
And then I was like, wow, I mean, this makes so much of sense. And then I understood as to how as a basic instinct we love our meats, because as a kid I used to love my meats. My whole family tells me that by the age of 2 I was clucking around if I wanted chicken, and
Mhm.
I would just make fish signs if I wanted to have fish, and that was from the age of 2 years. But I still remember when I used to go to my maternal or paternal homes, my grandparents, and we used to have parties. There would be meats made for the whole family, and then there would be meat made for Ankur. That this is only yours. You're gonna have this one full chicken or one full
Just
pork.
to make sure that you got enough or
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
just
To make sure I got my share properly. So it made sense. So I was like, okay, fine. So I'm probably a proper born carnivore.
Absolutely, that
Yeah, and so now it's been more than a year since I went carnivore. I've definitely noticed more changes in my body. I've become stronger. I've got more stamina. Libido's really high. My lean muscles really good. I see muscle fibers that I never saw before. So all of those differences I can make out, and so that's my story. And then I realized how my patients. So you were asking about that. Uh,
mm.
a lot of my patients come in with a lot of metabolic syndromes, and most of them are not eating right. So we can have a chat on that later. So, but
Yeah, I
that's who I
mean,
am. Yeah.
so this is fascinating to me, right? Because this is you're all the way in India, but which is pretty far from the US, but the standard spiel about what is healthy eating is sort of the same there or here, right? And
It's
something
same.
that
Yeah,
it's
it's the same. I'll if
these
you sorry,
go
sorry.
ahead. No, no, go ahead.
So I was just going through the guidelines that came out in May in 2024. And they made the food pyramid. I don't know if I can share my screen, but the bottom with the maximum 400 grams of vegetables, 100 grams of fruits. Then you have 250 grams of cereals and nutri cereals. Then you have 300 mils of milk or curd, 85 grams of pulses and legumes, out of which you may substitute 30 grams of pulses with fish or flesh foods. And then you have 35 grams of nuts and seeds, 27 grams of fats and oils. That's it.
I'm missing the meat. Where's the meat?
You can substitute 30 grams of pulses with some meat.
Wow. That's
It's insane.
incredible. That's incredible. So that is a heavily plant-based, I mean, it's vegetarian diet with the option to add some meat. And so no doubt about it, that's a plant-based diet.
Yeah,
And most of the people in India, I mean, are they mostly vegetarian, half vegetarian? What would you say the population is?
mostly vegetarian, for
Mostly
sure.
vegetarian.
A lot of people dispute that fact, but it's the truth. I mean, either they're purely vegetarian, or even if they're omnivores, they'll probably have meats once or twice a week, or maybe once or twice a month. I mean, the per capita consumption of meat in India is just 3.2 kilos per person per year.
Wow. I mean, that's really low. So translating that just for our US listeners, that is about what, 7 pounds of meat.
Yeah,
That is very low. That's, we
it's
carnivores
negligible.
are eating that in half a week. My gosh. So now India has this very high rate of diabetes because of this high carbohydrate plant-based diet. But people often think that, well, in India they're not eating junk food, they're not cooking with seed oils, they're not eating processed foods and candies, they are eating whole one ingredient foods and cooking with ghee. Shouldn't they be very healthy? And you made a post the other day that reminded me of this question, and I talk about this often, and it's that even a whole food diet can contribute to metabolic syndrome like Lustig talks about
Yeah.
when it is so heavily loaded in carbohydrate. So, I mean, when people say, well, it's whole food, it's vegetarian, it's traditional, it's ancestral, it's fine, it's single ingredient, what are you saying? That that is not the case. What is happening to these people eating these whole foods diets?
Not all of them are eating whole food diets. I mean, you look at the older generation, probably they would be having more whole food diet. But if you look at the younger generation, processed foods are here for sure.
Oh,
You have street food, you have junk foods, you have a lot of seed oils, refined oils, vegetable oils. All of that is here. But the point still is that a lot of the older population still has diabetes and metabolic syndrome. They have whole foods. A lot of people actually think that diabetes came to India after industrialization or after westernization in the 80s or 90s, when junk food came in, processed foods came in. There was a big boom. Coca-Cola came in, Nestle came in, Kellogg's came in, all of that. But no, I mean, I found papers from the Indian Medical Gazette published in 1895, pre-independence India, where doctors and surgeons have documented massive amounts of cases of diabetes in the rice eating population. Tell me, where did the processed foods come in? It wasn't there.
right.
They didn't even have refined oils or seed oils at that time. They used to use animal fats to cook. But it specifically mentioned that Indians with a high carbohydrate diets were suffering from diabetes, and the only way to treat them before insulin came out, and it has been documented, was to remove carbohydrates from that diet and go onto an animal protein, a high animal protein diet, and reduce the carbohydrate. And this was in the 1890s. Where did we go wrong after that? People just shunned all of these recommendations because they wanted to have sugars. So I was reading this another book. I was telling you about this. It's called Sugar, the Silent Killer, by Damayanti Datta, and she's really well researched for this book. And India started using sugarcane for sugar 3,500 years back, and the rest of the world started 1,000 years later.
Is that right?
So you can
Yeah, and
imagine.
that's just not what people think of. I think that they are confused about what's actually consumed.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, diabetes has been here, and even in 300 to 400 AD, two of India's the oldest physicians and surgeons. I don't know if you've heard of them, Sushruta and Charaka. They've documented the different types of diabetes. They were Indians, and in
Wow.
300 to 400 AD. So India was always sick because of the carbohydrate intake. I don't know how they got the sweet tooth, and a lot of carbs. But yeah, it's been there, and we're a very sick population. 17% of the world's diabetics are from India, and this is after less than 4% of the institutes publish the data. We've got thousands of institutes all over India. So all the numbers that come out, be it 10% or 20% or 30%, I think they're all underestimates. Because if you ask all these institutes to publish the data, I'm telling you, half the population would be sick for sure.
It's just incredible. And what do you think is driving the population to maintain this diet? Like you were talking about your instincts as a kid to eat meat. And if we all sort of show up with those instincts, what are the driving forces that are keeping people eating in the way that they are and keeping their health so poor?
Yeah, I think religion and culture take the front seat, and then propaganda, obviously. But even religion, I think something somewhere is not right, because there were a lot of Brahmins earlier who used to eat a lot of meats, the ones who don't eat now. And even in the Vedas, it's been written that the Brahmins used to eat meat. The hierarchy in India was that the princesses, and the kings and the queens would go hunting and all, and they would eat meats. Even the Brahmins too, they were eating meats at that time. The Indus Valley civilization, we're descendants from the Indus Valley civilization, and they used to all eat meats. Basically the Aryan civilization, and I mean, they've tested the utensils from that period, and they were full of fats and animal fats. So I don't know at what point it was said that vegetarianism is what Indians should be focusing on, because we used to have a lot of meats. So
Yeah.
I'm
And
still trying to
somewhere along the line, it just got sort of twisted.
I'm still trying to
I
find
mean,
out where that breaking point was.
yeah, I wonder, like, how much of do you know how much Indian food policy comes from US food policy? I feel like there are a lot of countries that sort of take the US lead. Does that happen where you are? Do you find that, like, when our food pyramid changes, your food pyramid changes, and they're just so similar?
I think they are. I mean, I think everybody follows what the US does, and I mean, I just told you what our food pyramid looks like. It's
Mhm.
similar to the US. It just shows that nobody's done too much of research, or they don't know exactly what nutrition is all about. I'm sorry to say, No offense to
Mhm.
anybody who's listening in, but that's the case. I mean, even if people are following, first of all, it's very difficult to follow these kind of recommendations because they can't be the same for every age group. They can't be the same for every social strata. People with different socioeconomic status. But if you go, but what I mean is, if you do one ingredient diet like we do, a carnivore diet, I've seen people who are from the rich background do really well. I've seen people who are in the lower socioeconomic status who actually understood what I was talking about and reversed the diabetes. I mean, they were
Mm.
able to sustain it financially by just eating fish, eggs, and mutton. And by mutton, I mean goat meat, fish,
Right.
eggs, and mutton every day. I mean, I know this guy whose HbA1c came down from 11.4 to 4.3 in 3 months.
Incredible. Now, this is not standard advice where you are. I mean, like you were saying, you used to hand out that same similar when asked about nutrition, you would hand out that same similar food pyramid advice. And so it's very different for you now to be giving out this advice. Like, what are you able to tell people? And do you get pushback in your ER department? Like when you're telling people to cut back on carbohydrate when the standard line is to increase carbohydrate and cut out fats?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The advantage for me is that the patients who come to me are sick. They want to get better. So I have that upper hand on them. That why are you sick, and since when have you had diabetes, hypertension, all of that. I'm like, and what has your doctor been doing? You're on these medications. Has it helped you? They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, of
Mm.
course, it's not helped you because you're in the ER with a complication of either the medicine or the disease. So listen to what I have to say. Probably nobody in this hospital is going to talk to you like this. If it makes sense to you, come back to me and we can talk about it. Or you can do your own research. I share my podcast, I share my Instagram with them. That you can go through all of these. You can go through the papers that we're all talking about. A lot of experts that we speak together, and we have conversations back and forth. Understand it. A lot of them actually do start understanding when I put up questions to them. Like, yeah, I mean, you do have carbohydrates in your diet, and this is what it does to your body. Uh, your liver makes enough sugar for yourself so that you can easily fast. Your sugars will never come down if you're not a diabetic. I mean, if you're diabetic, take medication, and if you don't eat, that's when you're going to get hypoglycemic. If you're metabolically well, you're not going, you will never get hypoglycemic because you'll always have your liver making your sugar from your proteins and your fats, and then those proteins and fats are going to come from the animal meats. So I go on this uh, once you all of us, once we start talking, you can't, it's
Right.
very difficult to stop. And then I have to just pinch myself. Like, I just ask them if they have any questions. They'll have a couple of questions. What should we cook in? And what else can we eat? What about nuts? What about this? So then I tell them, I mean, these are the 7 or 8 things that you're supposed to eat, and that's it. Don't look beyond this. Start slow if you want to start slow. But once you get out of this hospital, try and do this. Try and take it, one week at a time. See how you feel. I don't know how many of them would actually be doing it, but I've got a few patients and clients who've actually taken online consults, and I'm following up with them, and they're doing really well.
That's fantastic. I was gonna ask you about that. I mean, how do you keep up with the people after you've given them the advice? Do you know if they take it? Like, tell us about some people that you've affected this way. I mean, it's huge. It's terrible that they have to end up in ER first to see you to get the real deal advice. But after you see them, I mean, how have these people's lives been changed by going carnivore?
So I've had a couple of them, and I mean, they're like family and friends who actually got in touch with me. Not too many of my ER patients because it's very difficult to follow them. Once they get admitted, then they get discharged. I don't know most of them
Mm.
usually don't call back. But then I've had a lot of friends, families, and strangers message me either on my WhatsApp or through Instagram. And so I had this lady who was a carnivore, who is a carnivore, but her daughter, 17 years old, in that rebellious phase, you have emotional changes, your nutritional changes, your social changes, educational change, all of that. So she became hypothyroid. She wasn't having her periods for like about 3 or 4 months. Was eating a lot of junk. So yeah, I basically spoke to her, motivated her. I was like, it's easy for you to do because you do like to eat meats, and your mother is a carnivore, so it'll be easier for you to do this at home. And she took my advice. Hopefully, yeah, I've been checking with her mom, and yeah, she got her periods in a month.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm going to check the thyroids in probably a couple of months. I'm pretty sure that'll be down too. I've There's another very challenging case that I've taken up. I mean, this is my school friend's daughter's school friend's mom. So basically,
Okay.
the two kids, they're in the same class. I think they're in class 7 or class 8. But the boy is about 110 kilos. He's huge. He's got hypothyroidism. He's got diabetes. He's got hyperhomocystinemia. He's got insulin resistance, obviously, and yeah. So I mean, this all started during COVID. I mean, unfortunately,
Mm.
his dad passed away, so he went into junk food and carbohydrates and all that. But again, importantly, he likes to eat meats as per his mom. So they'd come over, and I've told him what to eat, what not to eat, and they've gone to Japan right now. Like that's the perfect place. You know,
Yes.
you're going there for a
Heavy on meat.
holiday. That's the best place. Have your wagyus, have your sashimis, have all the salmon you want, try all the seafoods, and enjoy
That's
it.
amazing.
And he's like, how much can I eat? I'm like, eat till you can't eat. And he's like, but that's a lot. I'm like, that's okay. That's not a problem. Try it. Uh, let's see what happens. I'm going to follow him for the next 2 or 3 months, and I'll let you know what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've taken his
Oh, that's great.
I've taken his before picture, and yeah, and I showed him around my house. I showed him my before and after pictures. Like, see, if I can do it, you can do it too. And he's like,
Absolutely.
all
And
right,
I like that approach of like, don't worry about it. Just eat the meats, get the ingredients right, get
yeah,
the meats in, don't eat the heavy carbohydrate diet.
yeah,
And then you can start, prescribing specific things. People always sometimes people want to know, like, how do I do carnivore the right way?
yeah,
And really, like, the right way to start for me anyway is just eat the meats. Like,
yeah,
eat the meats, whichever ones you like. Start that way because that may be all the advice that you actually need, and that may help. For some people, there's other tweaking that needs to be done later, but for a simple view of it, it's like just eat the meats and stay away from the other things and see what happens. And you might be surprised. And especially with young people, they're so malleable. Sometimes they just need to get out of their own way, and then positive change happens. They're not as damaged as somebody so further along. I wanted to ask you, because you've been in ER for so long, are you seeing now more and more young people coming in with serious ER complications from chronic diseases that you would not had normally seen in such young people? Is that happening around you?
yeah, absolutely. The thing is, you have the older age group, like above 50 and all, who would come in with probably heart attacks or stroke, but they would have known comorbid conditions like diabetes or hypertension or something. But nowadays, in the past 6 7 years, and this is pre-COVID also, it's not just about COVID. Even pre-COVID, now that I look back, we had a lot of young patients come in straight off having a stroke or a heart attack without a known comorbid condition. Like they were never tested for it, so they were never diagnosed for it because they thought we were fit. They would eat.
Yeah.
And now that we've started doing the research in my department, a lot of these young ones who are coming in and we ask them what they're eating, they're all vegetarians, carbohydrate loaded diets. And it's not just the processed foods that they're eating. A lot of people think that vegetarians and vegans have high ingredient food items which are processed, right? But it's not about all of them. If you look at the Jains, we have a lot of Jains coming in. They usually don't go into processed foods or junk foods,
Mm.
because in our survey we're all actually penning down the Nova groups also. They have 4 different levels of processing classified, basically. So we have that standard. So we're asking those questions also. Like, even if you're a vegetarian, are you having Nova Group 1 foods more, 2, 3, 4, a combination of all of them? So we get an idea about that, and what are the oils that you're using? Do you take any alcohol, smoking, all of that? So yeah, I mean, we're getting a lot of young ones who are being diagnosed with either diabetes in our department itself at the age of 25, 30. They're coming in with diabetic complications, or they're coming in with heart attacks. The heart attack is obviously a metabolic syndrome also. And when we ask their food habits, they're vegetarians. And we have a lot of, so till now, we've collected more than 1,000 patients. 61% are vegetarians, 39% are omnivores. And those
Wow.
omnivores, most of them eat either once a week or once a month. And they're, again, accompanied with rice or rotis or chapatis, which are full of carbohydrates. So
I mean,
that's,
it's just so telling. It's like, that's the evidence right there that, a plant-based diet or a vegetarian vegan diet is not the solution to our cardiovascular disease problem or
Yeah, yeah.
yours. Yeah.
It's not the solution at all. I don't know if
It's just
carnivore is a
it's just
solution. I
yeah.
mean, we've done carnivore on ourselves, and we know that this is the way to eat. This is the way that we've been eating for millions of years. Grains only came in 10,000 years back. A lot of people think Indians were eating grains all their lives. They were not. It just came 10,000 years back. Before that, we were
Mhm.
all eating meats, be it wherever in the world.
It's just incredible. Now, you just came back from a conference. You were in Taiwan, right? You were
Yeah,
in Taipei. And you had made a note that struck me that just looking around at the people there versus looking around uh, the population where you live and work is so vastly different just to see the health of the people. And then when you look at that, I mean, talk a little bit about what you saw in Taipei versus what you see and what we would see here in the US, looks
yeah.
wise, health wise. And why do you think there's such a stark difference?
So yeah, when I landed in Taipei, I was really struck by the fitness levels in people. I mean, everybody was nice, slim and trim. Walking around, lean muscle. You could see lean muscles. So then I kept my eyes open for anybody obese that I might come across. And I counted 5 people in 5 days. That's it.
Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, from the conference to and in the conference, I met a lot of Indians. They didn't match up. So they were all most of them had high fat percentage, of course. But I was looking at the Southeast Asian population over there, the Taiwanese population. 5 people, including one of the receptionists at my hotel. So that's it, just 5 of them. I went to the gym over there. It looked like the gym. I didn't see anybody who was fat. No offense again, walking on the treadmill for 2 or 3 hours. I did not see one person like that. I thought this is what a gym is supposed to be, where fit people come to remain fit.
Hmm. Right.
I didn't see anybody trying to get fit. I saw people maintaining their fitness levels, which is absolutely
Right.
amazing. I was actually shocked. It was absolutely fantastic. And then I knew that this was a meat eating country because I did my research before going. So I was making a bucket list of what all I have to eat. And you go to any of the restaurants over there and they serve you meats. I had a vegetarian friend with me. So we went out for dinner one night and, I asked the guys over there if they had anything vegetarian. And their answer was yes, we put vegetables in our meats. And I was like, no, that's not what we want. We want only vegetables. And, I had to translate that on Google Translate. And he had to actually go and check with the chef if they had anything like that because
Mhm.
because he was surprised somebody was asking for only veggies and no meats. I mean, not that I was having that; it was just for my
Right.
friend. Yeah, I ordered my beef skirt and a few other meats. And
That's my kind of restaurant.
yeah, and so he finally got some mushrooms, but it was again cooked in I think beef oil or tallow or pork tallow. Yeah, and he was okay with that because he doesn't have religious reasons for eating vegetarian. It's some other weird reason. Which so I was like, either you stay hungry or you eat this. He's like, no, no, I'll eat this. But yeah, everywhere I went, we got meats. I mean, we had the conference dinners, and again, this friend of mine had to actually wait for 1.5 hours for some vegetarian food to come for him, and
Mhm.
by that time, we were having abalones and jellyfish and some other kind of fish and prawns and beef, chicken, duck, a few other things, pork.
So it's just a very low carbohydrate, meat heavy diet is
Yeah,
keeping the
yeah,
people healthy.
absolutely. I mean, even if you get like set plates in restaurants, they have like very little portion of rice and some kimchi, which I wouldn't eat. So I told them, do not serve me that because it's going to go to waste. Just keep it for somebody else. I'll just have the
Mhm.
meats. And that was why I went to the steakhouses. I had that. They had these barbecue places. So you have your own individual tables with your own barbecue, light it on, and they get you the raw meat and you do it the way you want to do it. They have salt water that
That's
you can
nice.
put on. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was absolutely amazing. And I could see why everybody is so fit. And you'll walk into a room in India, and I've said this before, you'll walk into a room and you won't see two people healthy.
Mm. It's such
Impossible.
a shame.
It's just impossible. And this is what I was talking to one of my patients today. I mean, he was a little obese. He used to have alcohol. He had fatty liver and all of that, and hypertension. He's an omnivore. He claims to be an omnivore, but eats meat once a month. I was like, you're just a vegetarian, man. That's all. I mean,
Mm.
don't. You don't
Right.
have to be
Kidding yourself.
proud.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be proud of yourself that you eat some meats. You don't. But then I was talking to him and his wife, and I asked them, just look around in this department itself. Tell me 5 people at least, and they were like at least good 30, 40. You tell me 5 people who look fit and healthy. You just tell me, excepting me.
Mm.
Tell me Tell me anybody else that you see fit and healthy, or even if you go to a family reunion or a party or something, do you see more than five people who are fit? You won't even see five, and they actually understood that. Like, yeah, I mean, we don't see anybody who's fit. It's absolutely insane. And then India is such a vast country with huge numbers. The population is the highest in the world. So somebody was telling me, we have so many sick people because we have such a huge population. I'm like, that's such a negative way of thinking. Why can't you have the maximum number of healthy people when you have such a huge population, rather than have sickness and illness? It's killing the population. It's really bad, and it's affecting the kids, adolescents, everybody.
I mean, absolutely. And if you just go by, going by percentages rather than absolute numbers, I mean, that will tell you percentage wise if that rate of diabetes is there, regardless of the quantity of people, it's still that same rate of diabetes. It's still like you guys are leading. And I mean, we're not far behind.
Yeah,
It's a sad situation. And it seems to be one that we're enabling with pharmaceutical drugs rather than trying to get out of. I
yeah,
mean, what's it like? Do you see a lot of people on many prescriptions? We see this here. Polypharmacy is an absolute problem here where you take one, you take two, and all of a sudden you've got six things lined up. I mean, is it a
yeah.
similar situation there where people aren't helping themselves with food? They're just taking the prescriptions?
Absolutely. So today we had a case, and I was discussing with my team. We had a guy. He's got a kidney disease because of hypertension. That's high blood pressures. For those who don't know, uh, he's been on medications. He's been on dialysis, but his blood pressure is not coming down. So I mean, at that time, his blood pressure was like on 240 by 120 or something like that. He's been with us in the ED for about 2 days. We've given him five different kind of medications, and his blood pressure only touched like 180 by 100. And I was like, and this is what I was discussing: when do we discharge this patient? How many medications do we have to give him to bring his blood pressures down? If somebody would have spoken to him at the start of his illness, 10, 15 years back or whatever, whenever it started off, as to the right nutrition, he probably wouldn't have ever needed to come into the emergency department. And that is what I'm talking about. We can actually save lives without the patient coming into the emergency department. I had another patient a few days back, maybe I think last month. Again, a kidney disease patient, diabetic, hypertensive, and we were doing the research, right? So uh, they're Muslims, so yes, they're good omnivores, but again, they eat a lot of carbohydrates. They eat meats every day, but they eat a lot of carbohydrates along with that. But the meats would be probably one meal a day, and a lot of rice and rotis with that. And then we eat really healthy. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you're diabetic, you're hypertensive, you're on dialysis. You started with chronic kidney disease stage 1 so many years back. Now you're on chronic kidney disease stage 5 and getting dialyzed, and you're on 18 medications. He was on 18 medications.
Wow.
I was like, what is healthy about this? 18 medications. I'm like,
Right.
this is what you want to live like. This is what most of India is living with. A lot of
It's such
medications.
a disconnect and to say, "Oh, no, we're eating healthfully."
Yeah.
How are you like that delusional? You know
I
what I mean? It's
Yeah,
funny.
there's this really nice example again, and this is a close friend of mine. Her mom, so she was in my hospital for like about 10 days. We got her whatever treated and everything, and vegetarian and diabetic. So, and my friends become a carnivore after consults with me, and she did the same with her mom. And obviously, she was on medications for the diabetes. So I was like, don't stop your medications. We'll taper them off slowly. And in 10 days she came to visit us and the diabetologist again, and she's like, since I started carnivore, my sugars have started to go up. This is what my CBG, my continuous blood glucose monitoring is showing, 270s, 280s. And I was like, that's not possible. You're eating something else along with them. He's like, yeah, I'm taking the supplements that the diabetologist has told me. And I was like, show me those supplements. And that was a Treptin biscuit. And so Treptin Plus, because it's supposedly got no sugars. And there was a protein powder from one of the pharma companies. And the first ingredients of both of them was maltodextrin,
Wow. Which we
which,
know spikes glucose like crazy.
yeah, the glycemic index is 180. And then the serving size actually said 50 grams of serve has 26 grams of carbohydrates. This is what the
Wow.
diabetologist gave her. Only because it's supposed to be good for diabetes because it doesn't have the actual sugar. Come on.
Wow, I mean, that's incredible, and so you have to wonder, does the diabetologist not understand about maltodextrin, or do they understand, like, is it nefarious? Are they doing this on purpose? Is it the bottom line, I mean, we often say things like, well, diabetes association is in the pocket of big pharma and vice versa. And I mean, but do the prescribing doctors handing out those supplements, do they really understand the damage that they're doing? I don't
Yeah,
know. I'd like
I
to
don't
give them
think
the
so.
benefit of the doubt.
I
Yeah.
don't. I think they do it out of ignorance because they think that it's supposed to be good for you. They don't go through the research. They've never gone through the research. I mean, new things keep coming out from all these pharma companies, and I mean, they come and tell you that this is the new thing that's come out. This is the research and all that, which is not good research, anyways. I mean, all the diabetes associations obviously prescribe insulin, right? And the
Mm.
insulin companies are pumping in huge amounts of money to market their products. None of them since the inception of insulin, I think 1891 or 1910 or something like that. None of the insulin companies are sitting down and discussing how to cure diabetes, right? They're only discussing how to sell more insulin.
That's right. I mean, that phrase, there's a phrase that really gets me, and it's just, cover your carbs. If you're going to have carbohydrates, don't worry about it. Just make sure you cover them with insulin.
Yeah,
And this is the advice that so many people get. And then they end up on so many units of insulin, where before the invention of insulin, it was reduce your carbs. Now it's don't worry about it. Just hand
yeah,
us your money and
and
cover
and
your carbs.
and this is all over the world. I was just talking to on my podcast. I met this really nice carnivore couple from New Zealand, Suman and Seema Mudgil. And Suman was telling me that his dad was a diabetic, and his nutritionist and his doctor kept telling him that have your carbs. It's not a problem. Just take your insulin on time.
No. It's just such backward advice, right? Because when you're diabetic, obviously it's a problem of carbohydrate metabolism. What's the best way to help that is cut your carbohydrates.
Yeah,
And yet this advice still goes on where people say, "Well, I'm a diabetic, so I have to have sugar, 5 times a day. I have to take this 5 times a day." And they don't believe that it's reversible too.
yeah,
I mean, you must hear this where people are like, "Well, I've got diabetes now. That's it for me. It's not reversible." But yet it is.
yeah. It definitely is. And I don't know if people are not scared of diabetes. I think they should at least be scared of cancers because cancer cells feed on sugars, right? And whenever you take in sugars, you have insulin release. The insulin receptors have tyrosine kinase, and then you have higher tyrosine kinase expression. So a lot of cancer drugs which have come in are actually tyrosine kinase inhibitors. So you see the whole chain. I was just reading about it today
Yes.
itself. I knew that sugars cause cancers. Yeah, it ferments, and when you do PET scans, you're given dextrose to see which of the cancer cells are firing up. They're so excited that the scans pick it up, right? And they're probably multiplying. And then you have these tyrosine kinase inhibitors that have come in to stop the expression of tyrosine kinase so that insulin doesn't uh, come come and attach itself, and they can control it. There's an easier way of doing that. Just stop having the sugar, stop having the carbohydrate.
It's just incredible.
Yeah,
It's incredible, but it just speaks to the power of the addiction, that we develop as young people.
yeah.
We're fed these foods as kids, and then it becomes habit and addiction, and in adulthood, it all sort of catches up to us. But now, whenever I watch any of your videos, which I love, you always end with like, the answer is simple: go carnivore, just go carnivore. So there's a lot of people who, they feel like carnivore is like a spectrum, right? And as long as you're meat based, you're a okay, right? Where do you fall in that? Like when you say go carnivore, are you saying strictly meats, waters, meat, water, coffee, that kind of a thing? Where do you fall in terms of like how much carbohydrate do you think really matters for people? And like this line of carnivore, what does that include for you? And then your advice to people?
So I don't do any carbs except probably I'm just having a few blueberries for oxalate dumping that I might have, and sometimes I do have a little bit of dumping symptoms. So that's the only time that I do a little bit of blueberries. Otherwise, what I always advise is to go for your eggs, chicken, meats, goat, lamb,
Mm,
pork, buff, and oh yeah, by buff we mean buffalo meat. We eat a lot of buffalo meat, and if you can get access to beef, that's the best. And then you have the seafood. So it's a spectrum for me. I don't go completely strict on just beef butter because this is what is available for us over here, and we've got a whole range. Then why not? And I actually check out my metabolic profile every 6 months, and I did one yesterday after 6 months in July, and obviously my cholesterol is like 350 or something. My LDL,
fantastic.
yeah, my LDL is 200 something. My HDL is in the 80s, 70, 80s. My A1C,
Excellent.
yeah, A1C is 5.2. Insulin is about 2 point something or 3 point something. Yeah, so I
I
know.
mean, that's great.
Yeah, I mean,
But you
it's
tell that to somebody else and they're like, you're about to have, they think you're about to have a heart
yeah,
attack. And look at
yeah,
you. You like,
exactly.
you don't look like a person who's about to have a heart attack.
Yeah,
You know what I
uh,
mean?
yeah. My calcium score is just 8. That also they found like on the margin on the outer wall of one of my coronary arteries on the outer wall. So it's not even in the lumen. So it's not going to cause anything. But since it's there, they've got to score it, right?
Mm,
But otherwise, my arteries are absolutely clean. There's nothing in them. Uh,
it's fantastic.
yeah, and I use that new American Heart Association Prevent calculator. I don't know if you've seen that.
I
Yeah,
have
so
done, yes.
yeah, so they've removed LDL from it, which is a good thing. They're finally waking up. They've got HDL in it. They've got HbA1c, GFR. So with all of these values of mine, my chances of getting a heart attack in the next 10 is just 1.2%.
It's incredible. Yeah. I
So,
mean, that's phenomenal. And
so
what about fiber? I mean, your thoughts on this, oh, you have to have fiber to be healthy. You have to have fiber for gut health. I mean, tell us your take on that.
I don't know, and I mean, now that I look back, whenever I did used to eat anything which was fibrous, I used to hurt myself.
Mm,
It definitely causes inflammation and leaky gut syndrome. I don't think it's required. It's not a nutrient anyways, right? By definition, it's not digestible. Then why eat something that you can't digest and has have some wood shavings? Then if you really want to eat something that's not digestible.
I'm completely with you on that. It's like fiber and I always say we're not friends. We're not getting back together. I have no
Yeah, and
fiber.
even through carnivores, if by mistake or in a party, maybe if I was not getting something that I wanted to eat and I just wanted to experiment a little bit, ate something fibrous, I could feel it the whole night.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
same.
it's not a friend. It's not a friend for sure.
And I mean, just wrapping up, like what is your best advice for people who want to go carnivore? They want to be able to stick with it. I mean, you've helped some people go through the initial stages. What do you tell people like, about you can do it? What's the advice you give them?
Yeah, the first thing I tell them is to start slow, and by start slow, depending on who's taking advice. If it's a vegetarian who's converting, I usually tell them have some chicken soups, have eggs, so you get a taste and the sense of the flavors that is there. And somebody who loves their meats, they can go all out and start off with all the meats that they like. But I always tell them to document whatever they're doing and whatever they're feeling, or what they look like. Just take pictures, take before and after pictures. Don't take your weight every day, but maybe once a month or something like that, you'll see changes happening. So that there has to be something that keeps motivating you, right? So if you have enough pictures, you'll get a sense of the way that you're progressing, and then it becomes a habit, right? So I mean, there's a saying in India: anything that you do for 21 days becomes a habit. So I mean, and for carnivores, usually we always tell people, do it for 30 days, see how you feel. You'll probably never go back, right?
That's right.
So and I just tell them that this becomes a lifestyle. It's not a fat diet that you do right now, and after a month or 2 months, when you feel good, you bounce back. It's very difficult. I haven't seen anybody rebounding back from carnivore, except maybe everybody knows a little bit of Saladino. I mean, it's not that he's rebounded back. He's always been animal based. He's still eating and promotes all your red meats and organs and animal based. He's just added some carbs and fruits to it.
Mhm.
And I feel, I don't know if he knows this or not, but I feel it's because he was dumping oxalates is why he had all of those symptoms. Because he was a vegan before he went carnivore, if I'm not wrong. So he must have
This
definitely, yeah, he must have eaten a lot of foods which were full of oxalates. And once he went carnivore, he would have started dumping. That's why he was having palpitations and muscle fasciculations and some aches and pains. And I think those were all symptoms uh,
Mm.
yeah, of oxalates. And
Oxalate dumping.
I was discussing this with Sally also, and she felt the same. So I just thought that probably the narrative got a little lost over there, and a lot of opportunists took hold of that. That if Saladino was carnivore and he says that he had problems having that, it was not because of going carnivore. It was because he was a vegan before that, and he was dumping oxalates at that time. I mean, that's my opinion. I might be wrong, but that's what I feel.
Well, I mean, it's definitely true that oxalate dumping can be pretty harsh. I mean, those symptoms can be pretty difficult to deal with.
Yeah,
And then, you also have the issue of some people are so active, they are so like metabolically healthy that the addition of carbohydrate, they've got such huge muscle mass that they use it like a giant glycogen sink, and they
yeah,
can have more sugars than your average under muscled, 60-year-old woman. We were talking about
yeah,
two very different types of people. So,
yeah,
some people taking that I'm meat based advice, meat based plus a jar of honey is very different versus somebody who's, young, metabolically healthy with a large amount of muscle mass,
yeah.
and somebody who's on the total opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and he's definitely burning it off. I mean, I was listening to Anthony Chaffee have a talk with Professor Tim Noakes. It's out on his podcast. You should listen to that. And Tim Noakes had this. He had this really cool theory that your body is built in such a way it doesn't want sugar in your bloodstream. That's why it just maintains like about 4 grams in your 5 liters of blood, right? And whenever you give it some blood, it does two things, and it does it really speedily. Either burn it off as quickly as possible or convert it to fat as quickly as possible. Because
Mhm.
and insulin,
Yeah,
insulin,
otherwise you have a seizure.
yeah, insulin has a half life of about just 15 to 20 minutes. That's it.
Mm.
That's the plasma half life of insulin. So imagine the people who are insulin resistant, how much of sugars they're having, that your insulin is still staying in your body for so long, and when you become resistant, the half life is just 15 to 20 minutes.
Mm.
It should disappear, but it stops.
It's incredible, and people who are constantly sort of snacking all day, that they're just producing more and more and more insulin to keep
Yeah,
that blood sugar level from rising to a
yeah,
dangerous point. So, yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, it's the eating patterns is absolutely like a problematic thing. I mean, like I do 3 meals a day, at least 3 meals a day, but I'm not like snacking. I'm not doing any, obviously not having any carbohydrates. Are you doing similar, like 3 meals a day, 2 meals a day? What do you typically do?
Yeah, so I mean, I need my protein intake because I do a lot of resistance training. So I do about 120 grams of protein in a day. So I need my 3 meals for that. It's very difficult to have that much in one meal. But usually I start off with my breakfast and I have about 3 or 4 eggs, and then at lunch I have meats, and then for dinner I have meats again. But yeah, I mean, when I was in
Mhm.
Taiwan, that was really nice because I was having a lot of beef over there, which kept me satiated for a longer period of time. So I would have the hotel breakfast, and I would have they were making really nice pork for breakfast. So that was that was like a festival for me. So I was having pork and eggs for breakfast, and then I wouldn't feel hungry the whole day, and I would just have dinner at about 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and like a nice big steak or some other meats or something like that. And yeah,
That sounds fantastic. Now, I have to ask you too. Now, your wife is carnivore with you, is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah.
And your son is not quite, but sort of aspiring carnivore?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My wife's finally become a complete carnivore. So she was doing more of a keto last year, and now she sees the difference in herself when she looks at her pictures from 2023 and 2024. Because from 1st of January, she cut off all the other carbohydrates that she was eating, but she was still having some almonds and peanuts, and she became hypothyroid in March. She was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and I was like, this is all your oxalates that's talking to you, and we cut it off. We
That's
cut off,
very telling.
yeah, we cut off all peanuts and almonds for. She still has some tea with her milk, so that's like a low oxalate food item, so that she doesn't dump any oxalates. But she has
Mhm.
that, and her hypothyroid will burst in a month. She's absolutely fine.
This is the information that people need to know, that it's not always an issue of that you're lacking in some medication. It's
Yeah,
just something that you may be eating is causing
yeah,
these health problems.
absolutely.
It's just incredible.
Yeah, like type 2 diabetes is not because of a lack of insulin or a lack of metformin or a lack of Ozempic and all of those drugs. My uncle, who'd been diabetic for 25 years, was diagnosed with a renal cell carcinoma in January. He was asked by his diabetologist that he was on 3 medications. He was supposed to be started on insulin and dialysis, and I stopped them, and I turned them carnivore. And in 2 months, he was off all 3 medications for diabetes. In 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
incredible how
yeah,
powerful it is and how quickly people can
yeah,
turn it around.
yeah.
And if they could only believe it to be true, I feel like people would try it. But yet,
Absolutely.
when they approached most doctors, doctors say, don't even attempt it. It's so
Yeah.
dangerous. Don't try it. You
And
must
his
have
kidney.
sugar.
A lot of people think a lot of proteins will cause kidney issues. We've got the cancerous kidney removed that happened last month because it started to hurt him a lot. So we had to
Mm.
remove it because the tumor was there. His CRP before removing that had come down from 150 to about 30. 150
Wow.
to 30 after we reversed his diabetes and his hypertension. But it was then obviously hovering around 30 to 40 because of the tumor which was there. We removed the kidney, his CRP went down to 4 or 5, which we were expecting. Yeah,
Incredible.
we were expecting that. But his kidney functions are absolutely normal.
It's
Even
incredible. It's
even when he had both the kidneys, his creatinine was 3 when we started off carnivore, came down to 1.8 on carnivore with both the kidneys intact, and now they're both absolutely normal because the diseased kidney is out. And he was discharged in 3 days. I've never seen such a patient get discharged in 3 days after such a major surgery. Even the surgeons were surprised that he recovered so quickly inside the hospital. And I was like, it's only because of the food. And I was strictly monitoring what he's getting in the hospital because I had called up the FNB and told them, no ways are you going to give him the normal patient foods. No way. It's going to be cooked in butter. It's going to be eggs. It's going to be chicken. And that's about it. At least, it's difficult to
Mhm.
get goat and all inside the hospital. I don't know why, but no, I mean, and this is what they did. And he was absolutely fine. And he was discharged in 3 days.
It's incredible. I mean, just getting in that protein that is so hard to find in hospital food. I mean, that's what people need for recovery. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, they typically will give you, applausace and like a peanut butter sandwich or some garbage, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just incredible. I mean, he's very lucky to have you.
Yeah.
Well, I feel so lucky to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure and honor to talk to you. I mean, all of this information that you've given, when you talk about people needing to have the motivation to keep carnivore, I mean, all of this information is so motivating. Talking about keeping inflammation down and keeping yourself from getting cancer, keeping yourself from getting diabetes. I think it has so much to do with the food. And I appreciate you spreading this message, and coming on the show and talking to us and talking to the audience. Thank you so much for your time. Can you tell people where they can find you, where your Spotify podcast is, and all the information?
Yeah, sure, man. Linda, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much of fun, like always, chatting up with you. And people can find me on Instagram, and it's the carnivore.ep. It used to be something else earlier, but then I was like, this makes more sense because you don't see many emergency physicians or carnivores. So yeah, they can find me on Instagram at the carnivore.ep, and my podcast, the Desi EM project, DESIEM project. And that's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. So, you can listen in over there anytime you want.
Excellent. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. It's
thank you.
it's been my absolute honor. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, Linda, I'm gonna go have some minced meat and some chicken liver for dinner tonight.
That sounds phenomenal. Yeah, I'm thinking about what I'm going to cook up tonight. I'm not really sure. Thank you again. Oh, that sounds
Right.
awesome. All right, take
Thanks.
care.
See you, Linda. Yeah, bye.